Alan Boltby, Sunday, September 18, 2016. Voice memo 4 about the search for David Burns. After days looking for David, I found him last evening near Spring Woods, but I knew he'd run if I approached him, so I drove back to Toronto to ponder, and I thought, well, maybe Sarah could help. She just left. She did help, but it was hard. I explained that David's mom, Clare, was back in rehab and had begged me to find David. That Clare thinks David disappeared after high school 6 years ago because he discovered Clare's secret. 40 years ago, long before David, she had another son she gave up for adoption. And I told Sarah that David had taken on an alias, William Covell, bizarrely the name Clare's adopted son would have had if she'd married the father. And finally, I told Sarah about meeting that father, a reverend who led me to David on Crandall's farm in Spring Woods. I explained all of that, and Sarah didn't much care. I got irritable, complained about having to convince Sarah to meet me this morning, about how we'd gone from learning to sail together 2 summers ago to the occasional coffee to an unwilling chat on Philosopher's Walk here. And then I said, Sarah, I remember how busy law school is, but you're not helping me. What do I say to Clare about finally finding David, but not approaching him? He cost her 6 years of her life. Sarah turned to me. I saw the hurt in her eyes. I instantly realized my blunder. She said, what happened to me at Crooks Hill Farm when I was 17? I've been robbed of years too. It was criminal. Somehow, inside my thick, self-centered skull, I found the words. I'm sorry, I've terribly underestimated the trauma. The hurt in her eyes softened a little. She turned away and asked, what help do you need, Alan? So I showed her David's tattoo, the crab. Sarah said, my God, an altered face, an altered name. He wants to be someone else. And I asked, but why? Why is he hiding on a farm close to Spring Woods where he grew up, but still staying estranged from his mother? Of course, Sarah was surprised I didn't talk to David when I found him. What, I replied, walk up to him, grab him by the shoulders and say, hey, David, your mom misses you terribly. She's hooked on opioids and in rehab and might not make it because of you. So can we grab coffee with her? I reminded Sarah that Clare stumbled across David in Toronto 3 years ago. And when Clare got the courage to approach him, David was abusive and ran. And then I asked, so how do I stop him from running? David's isolated himself. He looks really dangerous, and I have no clue what makes him tick. Sarah nodded slowly and said, you're right. David will run. Unless he feels understood. I jumped in and I said, Sarah, in your 20s, you estranged yourself from your mom, all your family. Because of my mom's drinking, Sarah said. I knew that, of course, so I asked what I'd wanted to all along. What could somebody have said to you back then to make you willing to listen to your mom? Sarah laughed first, like it never could have happened, but then she turned thoughtful before saying, if there'd been somebody who understood what I'd been through, somebody I could relate to. I paused before saying, but David's a loner who's suppressing his past. Only one teacher at Springwoods High, a Mr. Kakowski, the computer science teacher, remembers David and said, quote, that David seemed to be going through some stuff. But everyone in David's grade 12 class was. A boy died in an accident. Sarah, I actually remember Kakowski, taught her grade 9 math, helped her a lot, and then she said something very interesting. I understand it would jolt David to discover his mother had had another son. Clare not telling David, it feels like a betrayal, like I had with my mother. But there must be more. You need to keep digging. Sarah suggested talking to Clare again, checking social media, but I said those were dead ends. As far as I knew, in 6 years, David had only opened up to the Rev. And then I saw it. I need to press the Rev more, I said, and maybe commit another break and enter. I didn't let Sarah ask. Kidding about the B&E, I added. She gave me a smile after a few seconds that made me feel better and said, let me know what you find, Alan. Then, getting up to leave, she told me I looked terrible. Asked if I would ever tell her what happened at my old law firm. I just said we mutually agreed to part ways. I wanted to suggest a coffee in a few weeks to share more details, but Sarah was already rushing back to the law school. Well, the Rev. He's got more time.
Listen, Mr. Boltby, I'm an old dog preparing to vanish in the forest. I must say your visit yesterday didn't make my tail wag.
Yesterday, you asked that in looking for David, I judge what's best for him as well as for Clare.
Yes, I did.
Well, I'm certain it's best for Clare, but as for David, the problem is I don't know him, and there's so little information about him, except possibly through you.
I've told you everything I know, Mr. Boltby, including confidences. That David began visiting me 3 years ago, that he revealed his real name as David Burns, that he's been near Spring Woods. But I'm starting to worry. Perhaps David should be left alone.
Reverend, please hear me out. Why do people estrange themselves from their family? It seems extraordinary, yet my friend Sarah did it too, and my research says it happens surprisingly often.
Indeed, I've seen it many times.
Well, estrangement can be about different values. A mother hates religion, a daughter embraces it. The daughter can't endure her mother's lectures that she's misguided and walks away.
For the last 50 years, it's been the other way around, but I take your point.
Or estrangement might follow from one family member doing something so awful, the family cracks open.
An impassable abyss, as it were.
That's what Clare fears. That David felt so betrayed when she didn't disclose the son she had with you and gave up for adoption. David abandoned her.
I suppose it could be, though David never said that to me.
But isn't it odd, then, that David searched you out? Wouldn't he associate you with that betrayal and stay away?
Yesterday you said Clare suspects David found the letters I wrote her. Letters from 40 years ago, when Clare was pregnant. That's where David stole the name I suggested for the child, William Covell. And the letter I wrote her 6 years ago, well, that's how he learned to find me in this nursing home. Well, in those early letters...
Yes?
I believe I said I wanted to marry Clare. I would have, quite happily, despite the implications for my calling.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Perhaps that's led David to have more sympathy for me than you might think.
Several other things you said yesterday stuck with me too. That David's anger seems like bravado.
He curses the world, but like the rest of us, he's vulnerable.
In fact, you said you guessed David is very lonely, and Mrs. Clare and his father. I have a theory, Reverend. David has a secret.
A secret? Who doesn't, Mr. Boltby?
A secret so difficult that he left his family rather than tell them about it, and has changed his identity, who he is. He hasn't estranged himself, he's hidden himself.
Well, perhaps occasionally I sensed he wanted to know how to redeem himself, but it was hard to tell.
Redeem himself? But for what, Reverend?
I have no idea for what, toward whom, or why. I need to be alone now, Mr. Boltby. Somehow I doubt I'll see David again. Tell him I sincerely want the best for him, if you choose to talk to him.
Reverend, there's a last thing I'd like you to do before I go. I need you to write one more letter. Please. Sunday, September 18, 2016, 6:45 p.m. Sunset soon. Voice memo 5, Alan Boltby trying to reach David Burns. Saw Sarah this morning, then the Rev after. Got back to Springwoods from Toronto around 5. Parked my car on the concession road down from Crandall's farm. Snuck to the old cottage behind the main house where David seems to live. Watched him drink beer for an hour in that rocking chair on the porch. Weird Sunday afternoon for a 24-year-old. But then David left with Crandall. Crandall said thunderstorms are coming, wanted to get more hay in, even if David had had a few too many. I'm short of time. Okay, walked around the cottage, looked in all the windows. David's not here. Back door looks open. I'm going in to find David's secret, if he has one. This is so disappointing. What am I even doing here? No clues about David's secret in the living room or hole of a kitchen downstairs. So I came upstairs. Just a bathroom in this bedroom. David will be back soon. And here, closet's pretty bare. Desk doesn't have any drawers, just some ancient farm magazines, a laptop, and gaming stuff. And the laptop needs a password. Whatever secret David has is probably deep inside there, and I can't get at it. Oh, geez. Sarah, I need to call you, only if it literally takes 1 minute. Nope, never met Krakowski before this week. Springwoods High didn't offer computer science in my day. You called him? Claire will appreciate that. I'm surprised Krakowski remembered you. Okay, so you had him in his first year. Krakowski's very words to me. David was going through some stuff in grade 12. David saw what? The accident? Really? Really? Josh Crandall? Oh my. Thanks for that, Sarah. That answers so much. Bad weather here. Gotta go. Sunday, September 18, 2016, 7:35 p.m. The last memo about David Burns. It better be. That guy's exhausting me. Anyway, end of a beautiful sunset on Crandall's farm after a wicked thunderstorm. Yeah, so I was prowling in David's bedroom when someone pounded on the bedroom door. David was looming in the doorway. My name's Alan Boltby, I tried, sweat creeping over my brow. I own Crooks Hill Farm, a couple miles from here. Look, I know this is a shock that I'm here in your bedroom, but really, I'm just here to talk to you. David's a scary-looking guy. You need to leave before I toss you out that window, I heard. He could have, too. No need for that, I shot back. I have something to offer you, something valuable. What are you talking about, he said. Freedom. To be yourself again, David. I thought those were pretty good words, but strike one. That's not my name, he said. Honestly, I was sure he was going to come at me, and I thought I just need to get him to calm a bit, to listen. And it was thundering and pouring outside. I yelled, we know some of the same people who like you, people who care about you, like Mr. Krakowski, your computer science teacher at Springwoods High. A friend of mine, another former student, spoke to him. Krakowski and you were close. David started shaking his head, but his eyes narrowed, and I thought, maybe Krakowski registered. I kept talking. I had to get to the letter. I get this is weird, I said, but I'm just here to help. The storm was loud. David just pointed to the window. He was resisting me with everything he had. Damn if Krakowski wasn't strike two. I was becoming desperate. There was no easy way out of that bedroom. So I yelled again, the Rev. Reverend Mark Covell. I was at his nursing home before coming here. Iron Maiden, that's what you call his oxygen tank. David digested that for a few seconds. He ratted me out, he finally asked. No, I said. He understands I'm trying to help. His last words to me were to tell you he sincerely wants the best for you. And the Rev wrote you a letter. Here, no risk to you reading it. David scanned the letter once or twice, then, still really threatening, said, what's so important? Give me 15 minutes, I replied. I'll leave after if you want me to. 1 minute, he said. His eyes were pools of anger and doubt. I was so close to strike three. David, I said, you can trust me. The Rev said so. And look, I need to talk to you about Josh. That got David's attention. Don't panic, I said. Just let me talk. I think you'll realize you can stop running and hiding like you've been for 6 years. Come on, David. Let's have a beer together on the porch. A beer for freedom, David. It's a great trade. David took about 30 seconds, then just turned away and walked down the stairs. I heard the kitchen fridge open, so I wiped my brow, took a deep breath, and followed him. Saw him opening 2 beers. I headed for the porch then. The rain was finally letting up. David eventually showed. Didn't look at me, dropped my beer on the table between the rocking chairs. I knew it was up to me to talk. My mind had been working overtime, but I thought I saw a way through. Got a story for you, I said. Dude, David said, very edgy, I'm in no mood for stories. I think you'll relate. Whatever, he said. I have an older brother, James, I began. Had, really, not part of my life anymore. We grew up together on Crooks Hill Farm. I got another disdainful whatever. My mother died when I was 12, I went on. My father was the Springwood solicitor, always busy. Wait, David jumped in. Your father's a lawyer? I told him Dad had died a few years back, that I was a lawyer too. Don't worry, I said. A beer together for freedom, remember? And another whatever from David. Point is, I continued, it was lonely growing up in Crooks Hill, and I wanted James to be my friend, but he could have cared less. Where is this going? David interrupted. To a tractor, I said. From the corner of my eye, I saw David squint. We had an old tractor, without a cab or roll bar like now, just an open, rusty seat and giant steering wheel. I was 11. James was mowing the lawn beside the barn on a slope down to a pond. I finally convinced him to let me sit with him on the tractor and steer, but then I thought jerking the steering wheel sideways would be funny. The tractor started tipping, as tractors do. James barely rescued us from rolling. It could have been deadly. We never told our parents, of course. David interrupted me again. I don't need to listen to any of this. My shirt started sticking to me. I said right back, bet an old tractor like that rolled and killed Josh Crandall. Maybe close by here. David froze. I continued. Mr. Kukowski says you confided in him. You and Josh have become friends. We're hanging out here after school when Josh rolled the tractor. Krukowski's crazy, David said after maybe 10 seconds. Like Reverend Covell, I answered, Krukowski's just trying to help, even if you swore him to confidentiality. Look, David, seeing Josh's accident must have been devastating. For anyone, right? But I'm puzzled. Why did you only tell Krukowski? This has nothing to do with you, David said, but I was at the heart of it now. My brother and I didn't tell our parents about nearly rolling our tractor. We would have gotten the strap for our carelessness. My guess, David, is that you've kept quiet about Josh because you have a secret. You had a part in that accident, some part, just like I jerked the steering wheel on our tractor. You probably didn't even tell Krukowski that. My business, David said. I'm also guessing that your part in the accident created a gut-wrenching conflict inside you. At first, you couldn't stand being the David who maybe even caused Josh's accident. You disappeared from Spring Woods and your family, ironically taking the alias William Covell that your adopted half-brother might have had. My business, David repeated, a little less convincingly. But that left you lonely and isolated, I went on, and with a hole inside. How do you redeem yourself for your part in Josh's death? Eventually, you found the Reverend, who offered understanding and guidance, even comfort, because he knew your mother. Leave, David said. Kind of a shout, kind of a whisper. And then you returned here, I said, trying to catch his eyes, to where Josh died, a step on your path to redemption, offering old man Crandall cheap help and a young man's presence. He's paying me, David almost hissed. Sure, I replied, minimum wage when a software developer like you starts at $60K a year. Crandall must feel like the gods are smiling on him. David, be free of the secret. What happened that day? Were you driving the tractor like I was? David started fidgeting. I'll deny everything if I have to, he said. I thought of that too. The cops won't know what to do with this, David. Telling old man Crandall, that's a tougher call, but why reopen that wound? David sighed hard and smacked his beer on the table. Let's take a walk, he said. He got a flashlight from inside, then led us to a very dark lane. I admit, I wondered about my safety, but David just trudged on, speechless. 5 minutes along, he stopped and shone the flashlight into the ditch beside us. I ran, David said at last. He paused a long time. We were horsing around. I was walking beside the tractor, kept faking like I was going to run in front. Did it 10 times, but that time somehow I surprised Josh. He swerved, caught the edge of the ditch here. I panicked, started running home. I was a suck. I asked, was Josh dead? Right after? Probably, David said, hushed. But when I started running, I heard a cry. They said he was really hurt. He was underneath. Let's go back, I said. Halfway to the cottage, I drummed up the courage. I said, there's somebody else you might tell. Your mom. What? David said. She's who asked me to look for you, I explained. She misses you badly. David was right back at me. So now you're going to run and tell her? I should just break your... And I stopped him right there. I told him telling Clare was his decision. But you should know, I added, your mother's in rehab in Toronto for opioid addiction. The second time. David went quiet. I got back to the porch and worked on our beers. You don't know my mom, David finally said. Family first. Make us Burns proud. Heard that 1,000,000 times. If my father forgot, my mother didn't. Your mom thinks you found the Reverend's secret letters from decades ago, I said. About the son the Rev and she gave up for adoption. The boy the Rev wanted to call William Covell, that name you took. And Clare thinks because she never told you, you felt betrayed and estranged yourself from your family. Only I figured out your secret about Josh half an hour ago. Hiding the past like that, David said, both my parents, it was weird. That stuff about family first, all BS. So when you did find the Rev's letters to your mom, the same week as Josh's accident, I added, well, that made it practically impossible to tell your parents about Josh. David just nodded. After a minute or so, I told him that people had mostly forgiven Clare for the opioids, that maybe that forgiveness was a message for Clare and him. He told me again I didn't understand his mom, and I looked at him hard and I said, she wants to find a way forward with you, David. The Rev can guide you. He misses you too. David just got up and went inside the cottage. So, before starting this recording, I phoned Sarah and told her I thought I'd had a good conversation with David. She was legitimately happy, even agreed to have coffee with me next week. And I was thinking I might open up to her about my dispute with the old law firm. And then David reappeared with 2 more beers. He looked, I don't know, beaten up, irritated, relieved, all at once. My heart went out to him, but I knew it was his time to talk. Finally, he said, tell my mom I'm okay. I'll probably drop by after visiting the Rev. Like, soon, man. I didn't know what to say. I could only think to ask, why are you keeping that apartment in Toronto if you're working here on the farm? He laughed and he said, man, I hate this place. I need to party sometimes. Right there and then, I decided no matter what, I'm going to stay in touch with David. Give me your number, I said. I want to text you where your mom's staying.